here we are back at the lathe. So I've got this bracket in here. I'm still going to have to drill and tap these holes, but for now I've got it held in here with this. I don't have this welded, so I'll weld that later. But I thought my bearing was going to be bigger than this, but the bearing actually just fit. It's a really skinny bearing, and you can see it in there working like it's supposed to. So I'm still working on the top side. I just made a quick little nut to hold all this together. I screwed up. For some reason, I was thinking when I put all this together that it was going to keep this constrained from going forward and backwards. That was before I made this plate right here. So if you look at it, this plate is actually what's keeping it constrained now. And I've got another thrust bearing right here. So I've got thrust bearings on either side of this plate. This nut screws down on top of it, and then that holds everything in place. And that gives me my forward and backwards axis, whichever one that is. I get confused on a lathe. I know on a mill, the way I was taught was do your fingers like this, and this is Z, or X, Y, and Z. So your fingers point to your X, Y, and Z axis. I don't know how you're supposed to do it on a lathe. I'm assuming on mine you have, one on top and one on bottom, but I could have swapped those in the back, so I honestly don't know which axis is the actual axis. I guess I could look at this. Huh. Yeah, so I guess it's X and Z. So Z would be this axis and X would be this one. So there we go. My X axis and my Z axis. So there's that one. And I've got this. I don't have a nut made for this yet, but it's kind of staying in place for the most part. But as you can see, well, you probably can't see, turning that ball screw moves the saddle. So this is how I did it. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but this was the best way I could come up with. I did have 4 bolt holes in here, but they were plasma cut, and it really didn't like trying to tap it. So I was going to I was going to tap those holes, but that just didn't work out. I also made these at work. So this is a bracket that I made, and the way I did this is I just laser cut a bunch of layers. So you can see the layers here, and then I TIG welded them together. And then I drilled and tapped, well, I actually just tapped these holes. The laser actually had the holes in there. So I just sandwiched these together as best I could and TIG welded on the side to kind of hold them all together. And then I put this in my mill over here with a boring head to, you can see the chips where I did it, to bore it out to size. So it was just a hair undersized. And I actually had to do the same thing with this. So again, this was a kind of a goofy, so I don't know if you can see, let me get my flashlight there. So it's kind of a goofy shape, and trying to mill that and drill those teeny tiny little holes would have probably been a pain. So I was at work and I was like, shoot, I've got access to this nice machine, so I may as well do it this way. It's like sort of like 3D printing, I guess. But you can see the layers there. And I haven't, this is just, I did this out of scrap material we had just to see how this was going to work. So I've got this. I keep going back and forth on, do I want to reuse the cross slide that was on it, or do I want to put linear rails down these two surfaces. I am honestly leaning towards linear rails more and more, but again, any input on that would be greatly appreciated because I just don't know what the better option would be. I think linear rails would probably be better. They may be more accurate. I don't know. So one of the things that occurred to me, if you look at that lead screw and you look at this one is just it's the next size down, and that's the next size down from the cross slide lead screw that was in it. So I don't know as far as, are these heavy duty enough to take the cuts that I'm going to want to take? I don't know. I may end up having to redo these, maybe bigger. I think this one is okay, honestly, and just fiddling with it, it really doesn't take a lot of effort to move that at all. I'm just turning this with my hand. That is my pulley that I got in. That's a bracket. It was $12, and I was like, shoot, for $12 I'm going to go ahead and just buy that. The funny thing is, I think I'm going to end up making it after I saw this. So I'm going to use a timing belt here, and then I'm going to put a timing pulley on this. So I'm going to gear this down to a smaller, so probably a 2-to-1 or something similar to that. So the torque that this puts out, which I know is actually pretty substantial, is way, way more than what I'm able to put on this with my hand just really easily. So that moves pretty well. It's pretty smooth. But anyway, there you go. There does seem to be some backlash still. I could be wrong, but it does seem like there's some backlash in that. So I'll have to fiddle with that some. Oh, well, yeah, I'm screwing this out. So that would explain it. I don't have this constrained yet. This one, hang on. Yeah, there's no discernible backlash in that at all. So, yeah, my backlash was coming from this not being constrained where it was supposed to be. So, anyway, there's that. So now I've got to figure out how I'm going to mount this here and how I'm going to mount it here. I'm still debating on, am I going to use this big of a motor on this axis? I don't think it's really warranted. Again, I'm not taking majorly heavy cuts. I'm taking some pretty light cuts, so I don't see myself really hammering that thing in. So this is a NEMA 24. I think it's a NEMA 24, and that's a NEMA 34. So you can see the size difference there. But I think this one is going to be plenty big for this axis. And that's sort of how I was thinking about mounting it, on a slide like this, to where it would slide this way for the belt adjustment. So when I need to tighten the put tension on the timing belt, you could slide this in this way. That's what I'm thinking about. There is just barely room for one of these if I wanted to put one in there. So I could go that route if I wanted to. So I've mounted this here in this position. I moved it back and forth and I played with it, and this seems to be the best compromise for my travel that way and this way. So when this is way back here, I've actually run out of room this way. So it's going to go as far this way as it possibly can. And when it's here, see, I've exceeded the travel of the lathe. So I think I'm where I need to be on that. So obviously you've got the chuck. It's going to be here. Your work is probably going to be out here. I do have a 5C collet chuck that's, a little bit further this way, I think. But, I'm going to be more or less in this general vicinity, and I've got a good 4 inches for this point is going to be, it can go this far if I want it to. So I think I'm good on my travel there. So I've got to finish a few things, polish a few things up. I'm probably going to take this plate back off and trim this. So trim up through here, kind of in a diagonal. And see, there's 2 of the holes that I was going to use, but I couldn't get them to work out too well. And I guess that's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it does seem to work pretty well. Actually, you know what? Look at that. There's a little bit of flex there. So I think what I'm going to have to do is come off back here with something that attaches here to give it a support to make this good and strong. So there's a little bit of flex right here that I'm going to have to take out somehow. I'm glad I saw that. But yeah, you can see as I turn it, I don't know if you can see it in the video or not, but you can see it just flexing right here. So I think what I'm going to have to do is take, maybe drill and tap a hole, something in this vicinity, or go with longer bolts that will go all the way through and have something that goes here and attaches somewhere in here to kind of square that off, make that more rigid. But to play with it, this will give me something to play with. But yeah, you can definitely see that not moving the way it's supposed to. So that's not going to work. That's where part of my backlash is coming from. So again, ideally, this will sort of go up under here with a timing belt to run both of those. And this will go, I was going to put it here. So have a mounting bracket. This thing's heavy. But what I thought about instead was this right here. So you see where this plate is bent. Instead of having a bent plate, have a one that's straight that would go kind of like here, and probably use one of these bolt holes here for a pivot point, and then another bolt hole up here, but on the plate have something like, yeah, I can't draw, like this. Yeah, so this would be your pivot point, and this would allow it to rotate like a half moon type deal. And if I could do that, then I would be able to kind of swing it out this way in order to get my tension on my timing pulley. Another thing is an idler pulley where I could bring it in from the side. So set it up to where it's loose and then have an idler pulley that pushes into it. I could do the same thing here too, but to me that's more moving parts that I'm trying to avoid if I can. But I've got a lot of the hard work done. So I've got, this thing is traveling like it's supposed to, other than that little bit of backlash with my little weak bracket there, which is annoying. I may be able to just come from here up back. I don't know. So I might put a brace here to strengthen this, and a brace here to strengthen that. I don't know. I'll play with that and see where I go from there. I've only got 2 of the 4 holes drilled and tapped to. I couldn't really reach those here, so I'm going to have to make another one of these tomorrow. I'm just going to plasma cut it out to make myself a template with 1/4-inch holes. I can lay it down on here, and then that'll give me my holes here that I can punch and drill, and then I can run that through there. I'll probably run some nuts on the back side of these as well. That's threaded, but I don't really like the way the threads turned out. So this is kind of simplistic, but this is really the easiest way I could see to do this. I fiddled with this and thought about it all day, and that seemed to be my best bet. So I've got that flex in there that I'm going to have to figure out. It's not in the ball screw. It's in the bracket. So I'll get that going. I am going to put my oiler thing probably over here somehow, mount it to where I can oil my ways using it. There's a little bit of rust. So that'll at least get some oil into my ways, hopefully. So I've got, you can see in here, here's where the oiler comes in. So these go out on that hole, and it's supposed to oil this. And I may reuse that somehow to oil the linear rails if I use those. And I thought about using one of these. So let's see. That one goes out there. I'm not exactly, I think that's some kind of a distribution block. But what I may do is figure out a way to tap into these to spray oil on this thing as well to keep it oiled up. Or I may grease it. I don't know. Chip in and tell me what you think in the comments if you don't mind. I did figure out that I've got essentially 11 inches of travel. So this block will come right up to here, and it'll go all the way back to here. So the very back of this block will go almost into this little hole back here. So I've got 11 inches of travel total with this the way it is. I did have to relieve my part here so you can see that because of, I need light. There we go. That screw head right there and this right here. So I had to relieve that, and I'm only actually attached in these top 3. I snapped the tap on that bottom hole. So hopefully that'll be good enough. And this is a really, really tight fitter on this cylinder too. So it's almost a press fit. It took a while to, I had to use the 1024 screws to actually pull it up onto it. It's a really tight fit. So one of the things I've got to figure out is how I'm going to attach this. So I'll probably have to take all this apart again and probably drill and tap this block in some way, or make another one. I don't know. I'll figure that one out. If I make another one, I may just go ahead and make a machined one instead of this cheaty way of doing it. What else? Yeah, so I'm slowly getting there. Slowly but surely. So if anybody has any questions or suggestions or a way to make this work better, please let me know. I'm all ears, open to any suggestions. I got on forums and talked to people before I ever did this, and they almost talked me out of trying this. Said it was going to be super expensive and all that. Now, I may be going about this all wrong. I may be using the wrong stepper motors, but, you know, I've seen people use these for like a Harbor Freight mini lathe. Obviously, the little tiny ones. I don't see really the big difference between using the bigger ones on a bigger lathe. So I've got the Centroid Acorn, and I've got to find an encoder. That's one of my biggest problems right now. I've got to figure out a way to put a pulley on here and mount an encoder in here with a pulley to where I can get my rotational encoder in there. And I have no idea how I'm going to do that quite yet. So that's going to be Probably one of my bigger challenges is finding the pulleys that will actually go on here. I think I have to have them the same size. So if you look at this one, I think those pulleys are the same size. It looks like a 1-to-1 ratio. And I've got to find a 4,000 part something. 4,000. I can't think of the word. 4,000 pulses per revolution encoder. So every time it revolves, there's 4,000 or more. I found a 4,000 and I found an 8,000. This one has an 8,000. So I'll probably go with that. But anyway, have a good night.